Thank you for being present here today. And I apologize if my connection will stop at a certain moment, since I'm now in the mountain range of Bosnia. So since it's only 30 minutes of the lecture, I will make the introduction only on the superposition of the personality as the allegory of the quantum physics and psychology. And I will not go into the entanglement theory of the quantum physics. So I will also try to avoid deepening the superposition theorem through physics experiments, and shall not go into explaining the Schrodinger's cat and quantum computing. So I will start with what is actually the superposition in the quantum world. So the superposition theorem is considered actually to be one of the fundamental principles in the quantum mechanics. It states that every particle, both atomic and subatomic, is subdued to be in infinite number of states at once. It means actually that the same particle can be in different states, in different positions, in different kind of its presentation at one moment. So how is this possible actually? Since I will not go into this experimental quantum physics world, I will try to explain it through a simple example of musical creations, actually. Does anybody maybe play some musical instrument, by instance? You can freely answer that. Maybe, yes. So if anybody plays, then it knows how the melody is created. For instance, I play piano. So when I press two piano keys simultaneously, both of them are at the same time independent from one another, producing two different tones. But on the other hand, what we hear is actually one coherent melody. So we have two different tones making one coherent, let's say, the whole. And this melody that we hear is in fact the superposition of these two tones. So it has two different positions, two different states at once. It is also a tone and a melody. So now I would kindly ask you to imagine a human psyche, for example, as an octave on the piano. Every octave consists on 8 basic notes, which can be played individually. But in order to create a meaningful melody, we are obliged to play several tones concurrently. This melody that we have created can be seen as a complex, actually, human psychic reaction. How it can be? We are not prone to be only cognitive or only cognitive or only emotional, but we are all the mix of these different states that we expose to our behavior, to our narrative, to our reactions. And this is actually the superposition of our personality. So we are never the same in the one moment and obliged to be exposing only one state. So we can deduct that all these cognitive, emotional, spiritual, and behavioral instances of human mind actually coexist in the states of superposition. So with the person's personality that we observe represents, for example, infinite number of colliding states, the question that arises is how sure can we be in our judgments of diagnosing the specific disorder, and we are not the ones that in certain way provoke actually the disorder that we're prone to interpret. So are we the observers that see only the one state of that human mind and we say, okay, that is it. We diagnose it and we make it conclusive and we make that person collide into that state. Because we are the one that states and said to one, okay, this is your existence now. What we can explain another, I will go now into a little bit of scientific explanation, is that, for example, the photon of the light. It was the experiment actually headed by Mordechai Heiblum at the Weizmann Institute, if I remember correctly, of Science. that shown that the photon of the light, basic particle actually of the light, exhibits the tendency to act both as a wave and as a particle at the same time. So, however, being observed by the outside party, actually by the observer, it depicts its definite state. So, in a certain way, the photon of the light is actually forced by the observer's perception to behave solely as the particle and loses its ability to behave in the form of the waves. And binding these disclosures to any physical state of being, and since psychology has accepted the holistic approach actually to the mind, to the body, and to the soul, the observer effect can be recognized in the process of mental disorders diagnostics. So, for example, if we observe schizophrenic in its context where its schizophrenia can be observed as it, we lose the ability, and the person that we observe actually lose the ability to behave differently, because we say, okay, you're schizophrenic, and you behave in that manner, and it's this. Let's say it's the observer effect that puts this person actually in that state. But if we take that person and put it in another context, for example, in the creative context of its mind, we can find this person to be an artist, to be a writer, to be someone who can do math beyond our actually reach. And regarding these postulates, human mind is susceptible actually to be in various states of thoughts, of emotions, of physical reaction, until it is subordinated by a definite analytic state of observe. So it can also imply that psychologists and psychiatrists actually put the notion to that person in the terms of state that it would be constant for that patient. And it's a subjective manner. So are we maybe the ones that put the diagnostic observations into the patients? What if we would let the freedom of that diagnostics and put it aside and put the person say, okay, you behave like something that is recognized in this diagnostic matter as that and that, and use it just as normalization to the person, just something not to be and feel alone for that person, to say that, okay, you're not alone in that problem. There are several more people and there are more and more clients that feel that way, but it's not a state that is constant. It's actually a state that you can feel that you're not alone, but we can overcome that by putting you not only in that. You have much more about it to see, and you have much more about your personality, and you do not expose that behavior all the time. There was this great movie, actually, The Professor and the Madman. I think it was the last or the year before that. It actually kind of explained something that that I'm lecturing for years now, that a person is not only that the psychiatrist or psychologist see, because how I perceive actually diagnostics. It's something that we as psychologists and psychiatrists see as a comfort zone, especially the young ones that start from the scrap. We get the book, and you have the chart, and you have several mark points for every patient, and you're like, okay, you have 7 of 5. Oh, you must be depressive. And then the person, what he thinks, okay, you're the person of the control, you're the person that has the power, and you tell me that I'm depressive. I must be depressive. No, you don't. No, you don't have to be depressive. You're depressive because of that and that. In that context, you are a depressive person. But in other contexts, you're also creating something. You're more than just a depression. You're a person of various states. Sometimes you create out of depression. Most of for example, Russian writers and poets actually created mostly from their state of not being, let's say, in the happy state of mind. They created wonderful works. For example, Bulgakov, that is one of my favorite ones. He created also something that is now in the world recognized as the literary peak in the terms of something that he was not happy about. But you are creative. You're not just being in that state of mind that implements that you don't have any value anymore. And that would imply that a person with a descriptive diagnosis may not be suffering actually from the implemented mental issue if transferred in other differing social contexts, where his or her mental problem would be perceived differently. Further, this formulation of the patient's mental states actually seem to be dependent on the subjective judgment of the perceiving parties, who are inclined to make a final decision of determined state in which the patient's mental picture will prevail. So we have, for example, Rosenham experiment. I think that everybody probably heard about it several times about now. That's actually sent to different hospitals pseudo patients, and that were perceived in different hospitals as actual mental patients. And those people were actually normal functioning people, let's say normal, like everyday normal functioning people in the means of, I don't know, advocacy, doctors, salespersons, caregivers, different different jobs that they implemented. And in different hospitals, they were actually recognized as the real patients without every meaning. Why? Because we are inclined as a personalities to take our matter in a subjective way. Aha, okay, you came to the hospital, you must have a problem. And I have actually several friends that were recognized like that. Oh, you came to psychologist, you came to psychiatrist, and every word that you hear is actually determined as something that is irregular, that something is not as functional as a human being should be. So is that moral actually? Is that ethical? Let's see how the psychologists and psychiatrists should treat their patients. It's something that it shouldn't be, it is subjective, but it shouldn't be as subjective in the state of defining that state. Because if we are prone to the subjective manner, then we will lose the whole context of superpositions of that personality, and we lose our superposition. For example, in DCM-5, now you have this, for me, completely irrational structure that there is another diagnosis. If you refuse the psychological or psychiatrist treatment, then you're also a psychiatric patient. Okay, let's wait for a moment. We are also giving us, then everybody could be a patient. Yes, we all have our problems, and we can all be the patient at one time. But it's not a matter that we can just give the medicine and say, okay, you're a patient, here are some medicines, or let's have a treatment for 5 years now, and maybe you will feel better, but for sure I will help you because I have diagnosed your state, and we will see how it will go. Maybe you will be forever a patient. So I don't see how today's work of psychologists can be in that manner productive actually in the healing of the problems. Because if you heal the problem as a problem by itself, as a constant state and definite state, then you don't actually use all the values of human personality. You're not focused on how to make the values of the human persona more applicable to its everyday functioning, but you use the state that is actually deteriorating the human persona because you are feeling that it is your safe zone and that you know about it. And that's why, for example, for me, the quantum physics has explained a lot about human consciousness. If we see this, unfortunately, quantum entanglement is quite more problematic for explaining because you use the terms of atomic collation that are actually colliding by itself and with other atoms. We can see how the transfer of two humans may influence what other think about itself. So you have this actually pronunciation, actually focus on the human. If you say to someone, okay, now I see you as, for example, borderline personality. That person will also go to the Google and see all the defects of that person, and it itself become that person because he can now know about himself something that he didn't know. And when you see something about the problem, you tend to recognize that problem in yourself, and also you feel safe in that recognition, and you stop yourself in that all the positions that you have. So you should also, what should be actually the main focus of today's therapy for me is focus not on unstable states of personality, but on the ones that value all the functionings that predicts that person as something that he can meet and share with the common life, and say that, okay, this is my value. For example, I had a patient that didn't have much trust in what she works. And she was like, I don't have any values. Whatever I do, it's not good enough. But actually, she was a really good writer, and she was a poet. And I was trying to make her, okay, yes, you have depressive states. And when you collide into that state, that is a depression, and you're not alone into that. But you have many more values, and you have your peak experience, as Maslow said, for example, that when you come into that peak experience, you create a wonderful deeds and wonderful creations that not many people can actually say they have in their lives. And she was finally, when she could step one, let's say one step further go, she actually created a piece that was recognized not only by the Serbian community of the writers, but also she was published in Croatian and in Austrian community. And she was like, yes, now I can see that it's not only this state of depression that I'm suffering, I can do much more. And I think this is one of the main problems that we must focus now in our actual diagnostics. Not to feel safe as diagnosticians, but to make a further step for our clients. And in these states in these steps that we make, we must make our client see all the possibilities that he or she can can make and can show to the further socialization that they are valuable actually in that. So I wonder at what would happen, for example, if the patient would be treated as healthy, actually, and be supported in giving into the determinate state of a functional psychic state of being. Would they actually recover more profoundly and rapidly than if from what we diagnose them and keep them in hospital, especially in Serbian hospitals where you don't have any creative thinking, any creative, let's say, therapies, but just, you're that and that, here is this medications, and this is what you get. And I tried to keep it short, probably not explaining it too much, but I see I have only 8 minutes left for all the questions. So if you have any questions regarding this, I will now let you ask them.
Please, colleague, we have about 5 minutes before the next topic start. Alexander, please. Alexander, your microphone.
Yes, thank you, Sergey. My hand-raising function doesn't work on my phone, so I'm sorry to have to wave like this. Thank you so much for the presentation. My question relates to the role of superposition vis-a-vis identity. To what extent do you think that we can switch our identities in the counseling process? That we can superimpose one identity over another, following the logic of the quantum quantum physics. Specifically, what I'm asking is, we often see people in counseling who have issues with, as you said, with who they are. They doubt their worth, their self-worth. They seek to reaffirm their self-worth through all kinds of dysfunctional relationships with others, including fostering relationships with others which will hurt the significant others. Now, one of the ways to address that is to encourage the person to reconceptualize their own identity. And do you think that this can have a quantum context and a quantum explanation? Do you have an idea about a possible methodology whereby we could work with people to listen to the clues in their lives, to try to see the energies that surround them and that motivate them and others around them, and to sort of try to reinvent their own identity, to superimpose a new identity, a new kind of sensibility, a new kind of values, which would completely change them in their specific relationships, which cause them problems? Or is that too ambitious?
No, honestly, thank you, Alexander, for your question. I don't think it's too ambitious. I think it's the problem, actually, again, to the psychologists and psychiatrists, because we are prone to focus on the problem, and we are not prone to focus on their values in everyday life. For example, as I said, in schizophrenia, everybody's focused on what they interpret as hallucinogenic or dysfunctional. But if we would focus on other values in their life, and if we would try to make these, let's say, values of theirs that have been exposed in others' contexts, then I think we would be more productive in the way of healing the patients. And in that way, I don't think any actually treatment that is focused more on abilities than disabilities is too ambitious. And I think it's the problem of us, as I said, as the therapists, that we are not able actually to go around something that we have learned by the book. And we must go out of that border. We must go out of the safe zone of ours and recognition of what we know and try something else. Try to focus on the values and the abilities of that person, because none of the person actually is just one instance. You can see that in everyday life. For example, somebody is entrepreneur and somebody is a writer at the same time. Somebody don't know how to, cook, but it's a great possibility of theirs to be able to, contact the animals, for example, or to take care of the children. So we have to make a switch from being so strict in our diagnosis and to being focused on what is wrong, and to be able to see what actually we can do about their other abilities, and make it actually more visible to the patients
Mm-hmm.
themselves. I hope this could be an answer.
Thank you. We have also one question in chat.
Yes, I see. Thank you, Anastasia, for your question. Well, yes, it can, because social construct is also one of the terms, as I see it, that can be reliable for the dysfunctioning moment. Why? Because we are constantly, we are used to see the social constant something that is that we are functioning in everyday life, and we usually don't change that context that much. For example, the family is one of more, usual concepts that we have the problem. Sometimes when I have, when I have clients in psychology, I try to not stay in the room with the sofa and with the chair where I'm sitting, but I'm trying to go, for example, in the nature or something that he or she feels more freely to talk about, not to have this empowerment moment where he or she sees me as their therapist, but try to overcome that and to see that I'm also just a human. I'm not some empowering God who knows all and that will see its future. Because usually when you say that you're a therapist, they ask you, oh, what will become of me? Can you tell me? No, of course I can't tell you that. I don't have a crystal ball that will tell you your future. And I'm trying to be more of a human to that person. So, for example, we go to a park or to a botanical garden, and to be a context that is neutral for both he or she and me. So it doesn't have this empowering state that, okay, I'm a patient or I'm a client to yours. So yes, I think it can be something that can also, let's say, give an advantage to the healing process of the patient. I also hope that I answered the question.